So welcome everybody for the class today. We're gonna actually be going over Nami. So we're gonna be talking about just kind of like the strengths and weaknesses of Nami, what makes her good, what makes her bad, how to play around these strengths and weaknesses. I'm gonna be going over some lane phase stuff, a lot of team fight stuff, skirmishing, etc., how to position, turning fights, etc.
Warning, warning, warning.
Then let's start off with like something basic for everyone in the class. For like, you can post it in general chat if you just want to. But can you guys tell me some strengths of what are strengths of Nami? Like, what are things that are factors that make her a powerful pick, or something that gives her power so that she can kind of impact games?
I mean, obviously sustain in lane, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Oh, that's
So
their
she has
strength.
sustain, non-conditional. So you just press it, right? You don't have to hit like Qs and then heal somebody like Soraka.
Yeah.
Ult, great for disengaging. You can win without hitting a single bubble. True, true, true. So let's, I'll add to this, for example, has kill pressure when hitting skill shots, right? So if we hit any bubbles, not usually something an enchanter has. So, for example, like if we use examples like Janna, Soraka, Sona, Lulu, all these champions have like crowd control maybe, but they're more disengaging. They're a lot harder to get kills on, but we can get kills if we're hitting bubbles for laning phase. Her E applies on-hit effects, which makes insane combos. True, E easily applied to everybody, right? We can cast it on everyone for their spells, their auto attacks. It's easy to get value out of this no matter what. Okay, let's space this out a little bit.
All abilities give move speed, so
True.
the team fight, that's actually really good, probably.
Yeah, to kind of tackle onto that, great for kiting, but also chasing, right? So in scenarios where you're starting to win a fight, it's very easy for you to kind of, I call it movement speed swing, right? So we have the E that you can apply to people, and then we can also use our abilities to give movement speed, so we can kite in and then go back out, chase them down, etc. You can reinforce yourself from long range. Yes, has incredibly long range, right? This is super good because we are squishy. So for example, we can ultimate from really far away, we can cast our E just on top of our teammate, and then they can auto attack and extend the range, right? So we kind of want to be sitting super far back. Cool. Let's do other ones. Moonstone's super powerful on her, right? So we utilize the Moonstone pretty well in our kit nowadays, just because of the fact that we're always kept in combat very easily. This amplifies our healing effectiveness super, super well. Let's see here. Yeah, we have non-conditional healing. We have bubbles. Okay, so trading pattern, very simple, right? We walk up, auto W. So our trading pattern is very simple, so it's like kind of easy for you to pick up this champion like relatively early on when it comes to like fighting and like trading in the laning phase. That's super good too. Very good, very good. Also a cool trick, E on your teammate will proc mana flow. So that's also a super good thing. So you can, even if you can't create a lot of pressure, we can still stack up our mana flow very easily by E'ing our teammate, and that will proc mana flow. So next, let's jump over to weaknesses. Kind of, we want to get like a good baseline of what we're looking at for character strengths and weaknesses. So what are some problems that we encounter when Nami is played, or when you're playing Nami in general?
Well, her mana cost is very high.
True.
So early in the lane.
Mana cost super high. Probably one of the highest in the entire game, right? True, true, true. What are other weaknesses of this champion?
Squishing lane can get killed if they, especially if they flash bubble.
Very squishy. Okay, okay. We'll just kind of tie into that. Does poorly early versus all in lanes, right? We do kind of poorly against all in lanes. Very bad self peel. Yeah. Gets outscaled by other enchanters. That's an interesting one. This one is maybe in terms of stats for powering up your ADC, but she is a better mage enchanter, but does better enchanting mages, right? So our E and the fact that Staff of Flowing Water is also not a bad like second or third item on this champion means that you might not like scale in terms of power for enchanting your AD carry as well, but you actually are a bit better at enchanting mages. So maybe we could also put that just like as a strength, is good at powering up not only ADC but casters, right? Because the fact that we give movement speed and our E procs on spells, etc., she's actually pretty good at working with more of a range of champions rather than like a Lulu. Jinx is obviously going to be significantly better than anything Nami can pair with by herself. No initiation, that's true. Definitely don't want to actually be, no way to start fights. We definitely don't want to be the ones aggressing or starting fights. Like walking up and bubbling is gonna kind of drop, dial back to this low HP kind of thing. And our wave is so slow that it's really hard for us to get engages off. Okay, so let's add to this a little bit, which is that low damage, right? This champion doesn't do a lot of damage because, we do health swings. So, like, our spells do some damage and then mostly healing into that sense. Skill shots are hard to hit. So, like, hitting bubble, hitting wave, etc., especially bubble, is significantly harder just because they are slow projectiles. So that's like an important thing to note, is that because of the fact that our skill shots are kind of hard to hit with the bubble, and even wave is kind of hard, as we've kind of established that we don't have any way to engage, that means that our like individual agency is a bit more difficult than others. So it takes a lot more proficiency to get the high value out of the champion, whereas champions like Lulu, for example, right, you can pick them up very easily. All of those spells are very straightforward. They're all point and click for the most part. And they're all quite powerful. So those are kind of like the drawbacks of this champion for sure. Okay, so now that we've kind of like talked a little bit about strengths, weaknesses, etc. of the champion, let's jump into rune setups real quick, because there's a couple of different ones that we've been running, and I just want to break down the reasons behind each of the setups that we run. So let's see. What I'll do is I will present you with a rune page, and you tell me when you would run this rune page. I think that's what we're gonna end up doing right now. So like, when would you run this kind of rune page? So a Guardian and a Precision Legends Tenacity. When are we looking at running a rune page like this? Zed, Talon, Kayn. There's a strong engage support on the opposing team. Yeah, against pretty rough lanes. For sure. Basically, this kind of rune page is a little bit different than other pages that we've been taking. Now, this is mostly predominantly used when we're fighting against things that can dive us a lot. So if you're against lanes like, Leona is a really good example of this. So there's kind of two adjustments. So Guardian as a baseline is really great against either a lot of assassins or against tank all-ins where you're not concerned with trying to like harass them, you're just trying to survive the lane. You can switch between kind of two secondary rune pages, which is the Presence of Mind, Legends Tenacity, or Transcendence Mana Flow, just depending on your matchup. So, for example, we would take this page more against things like Nautilus, things where Legends Tenacity doesn't get a lot of value. But if there's a lot of crowd control against the enemy team with Engage, so we'll use examples like Leona, maybe Rel, for example, and you're worried about getting chain CC'd, then Presence of Mind, Legends Tenacity is really great. Also, if there are champions like Udyr, Hecarim, Lilia, this is also great to run as a secondary because that has a lot of CC. Now, the main thing about this page really is just you can change between either Overgrowth or Revitalize, just depending on how concerned about the matchup you are. If you have an ADC that can kind of just like absorb the engage, or you can play behind, then Revitalize is going to be a little bit better, right? Because we want the extra healing. But when we're playing against things where you're concerned about being all in yourself, maybe there's an Alistar, there's a Zed, there's a Talon, right? There's lots of things that are going to jump on you. The Overgrowth is going to usually just be better because the primary reason for this page in general is just to survive. We want to make sure that we don't die instantly in the fights, as we've kind of already tackled right here, right? She's an incredibly squishy champion, and she doesn't have really great self-peels. So we want to make sure that we are consistently we are consistently getting value out of our champions so that we don't die instantly. So we can circumvent some of this by just taking this resolve tree right here. And then we'll look at 2 variants of another page, which is going to be like this. We'll just do the non-greedy page. So when you're taking this page, what would you be taking this into? Give me examples of champions maybe in the lane or against enemy team compositions where you would want to run a page like this. Lulu, that's a good example. Against other enchanters. Yeah, so against other enchanters or mages are really, really good. So if you're playing against like a Zyra, a Brand, a Vel'Koz, etc. This is a really good page just to run. In general, it's kind of like the super scaling. It's a little bit more constrained on mana, but it will give you a bit more power. Yeah, anything that pokes is really good too. So yeah, like we said there, Zyra, Brand, Vel'Koz. I don't know if you play against things like Xerath, Senna, any champions that are long range that don't have like great all-in and you're not worried about them kind of just like 100-0ing you, this is a really great page because conditioning still gives you lots of tankiness out of laning phase, and Revitalize is going to be giving us what we want the most, which is extra healing, which is basically our entire kit of keeping people alive. But the Airy page is a little bit better just because Nami is actually one of the great champions that utilizes AP quite well. If you ever get above 200 ability power, then your W starts actually dealing more healing and shielding and damage. So that like per bounce. So once you break the 200 mark, it's really, really good for you on this champion. It's a little bit harder to get access to a lot of AP, but for those people who go longer stages of games, Gathering Storm is really great, and Transcendence and Mana Flow are just super good on the kit. You can kind of also, as a secondary, change this adaptive into armor or MR if you really are concerned about being all-in. But in general, adaptive power is a little bit more flexible in terms of just like healing your teammate. And then the other option obviously is going precision secondary, and this is really a kind of like full green one. You'll never run out of mana basically with this page. If you're against a lot of champions that poke, it's actually really good. If you find yourself having to spam W over and over again to sustain your teammates, or you stay on the map for a long period of time, this one's a little bit better, but you're going to be missing out on a little bit of tanky stats and extra healing. So that's kind of the differentiation between these two pages. Can I skip tier with this build? I would recommend that you never skip tier. I think tier in general is just too important in all stages of the game that no matter what rune page you decide to run, I think tier is just kind of an essential thing. Plus, it's really like how I used to do Dark Seal in Season 10, where when you back in your first buy the tier, or maybe after like 1 or 2 buys, it gives you a lot of power in the laning phase just because of the fact that you don't have to deal with kind of being clipped so hard on mana sustain. You can take more trades actively, you can trade HP down, utilizing the fact that you won't run nearly as well. So I recommend getting tier still all the way, all the time. But yeah. It only works if you interact with the opponent, so the mana really only in so you only have the mana really only in lane. No, it works really well with just moving around the map a lot. It allows you to spam spells more often. You'll be able to cycle stuff. Plus, like it's really efficient. You spend 400 gold for upwards of, I believe, 500 flat mana, and it builds back into itself too, because most pages you're gonna run have mana flow. So I was talking about Presence of Mind. Oh yeah, that's true. And then most build paths, because we take mana flow, the higher mana you have, the more missing mana you can be having. So if you read right here, right, once you reach the bonus, it restores 1% of your missing mana. So it's just a flat rate. It's not anything else. So having a bigger mana pool is really, really powerful for your champion. So I recommend basically always buying tier. There are times where maybe you're playing against something that's more all-in-ish. So like, let's say you're playing against the Leona or Nautilus or something, and it's totally reasonable for you to, instead of running a rune page, or instead of getting tier first, you can try to get like some HP, like a Ruby Crystal or a Kindle Gem, maybe get your boots if you're not using too much mana. But I think after the first item, you can also buy tier, and that is really, really good too, just because of the fact that as you move around the map and you frequently interact with people, you want to be able to just constantly spam W on your teammate to sustain them. And as we've already tackled, right, our mana costs are really high. So tier kind of supplements a lot of those problems that we run into. There are some times where I don't buy tier on first back and instead wait for my full moonstone before tier. That's fine if you're against like a tank or something like that. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of mechanics on this champion real quick. Number one, obviously, is going to be our bread and butter for team fighting, how we want to start team fights. So what I'm going to end up showing you guys is kind of just a clip of what we always want to be doing in team fights and just in skirmishes in general, which is using our wave to set up our bubble. It's really hard to hit our bubble, as we've kind of already established, and what we've also talked about is one of the great things about Nami is the fact that she can operate from such long range. So using your wave and then moving forward to use your bubble is a really great way to just kind of have the start of every team fight. Remember what we talked about, where the fact that we can use our teammates as kind of like an extender in that sense for positioning. So we always want to make sure that we're getting value on that sense. So anytime that people are engaging in this sort, it's really great to just use your wave here, and knocking them up will allow you to almost always guarantee the bubble. Because of this combo, you just want to use this as basically your bread and butter for any time that you're having any team fights, as it just makes it significantly easier for you to do stuff. So that's kind of like a visual representation of kind of like one of our earliest mechanics. Another mechanic too that I don't have anything to show you for, but I want you to remember is, let's just write it down here. Mechanics. So use wave to then use bubble. So easy to hit everything together. Plus this means that if you're using your wave first, you're more likely to be positioning in a lot safer location so that you can then bubble off of that. Another mechanic though is you can use your E while attacks/spells are in the air. I didn't get anything visual for you for this one, but it's super important to acknowledge this as a mechanic. That's a common mistake that a lot of people make in laning phase, where they give their AD carry E when they're not trading or anything like that, and then because of that, then they walk up and the enemy backs off, and then you gain no value out of the E. And remember what we already talked about, where Nami's kind of a mana sponge in the early stages. So using this mechanism for our E is really, really great. You can use your E while spells are in the air or auto attacks are in the air, and it will actually proc on them when they collide. This is a great way to always gain value out of our E in most situations. Most of the mechanics for Nami are kind of rudimentary and basic, but these are kind of some of the unique ones for the most part. Also, another thing to note too is your W resets auto attacks. So what you can do is, in ideal trades, is you auto attack, and then you W, then you auto attack again. If you can have extended trades in that sense. So having trades in that way is really, really great for us to create pressure in the laning phase and get really good trades out. Remember that your auto attacks actually do a lot of damage in the early laning phase. Another thing to note too that's actually very important for the W is if you W yourself and it bounces, minions won't attack you. It lightly resets it. It's not as clean as auto Q auto from like a Leona or something like that, but it's really great for weaving it in because the W eats the animation time constraint, and then you can auto attack again afterwards. But yeah, so minion aggro is pretty important for laning phase, and we'll actually be going over this with our laning phase breakdowns, but when you W yourself and it bounces over to an enemy player, minions won't auto attack you, but if you W enemies, they will. So try to utilize this trading pattern a little bit more. It's kind of like learning Sono, where if you learn where the bounce radius is and you W yourself, you can walk into range and have it bounce onto them, and the minions won't attack you. So it's actually really great for trading. Plus, it means that you're healing a lot more because the first W is bouncing off of you. So what I want to move on to next is kind of like laning phase stuff. So this one will be us kind of tackling some how to play with our jungler. So making sure that we're always doing laning phase stuff in the sense of our jungler, because our jungler interacts with us a decent amount of the time. So because of the fact that we have a lot of CC in setup, we want to make sure that our laning phase is good and clean, and that we're actively setting up our teammate to be successful with ganking for us. So as you can kind of see right here, we're actually going to be playing against a tank. So what I want you to mainly understand about tank matchups is making sure that you're playing reasonably aggressive in the early stages, but also punishing all-ins. So if you ever have scenarios where players go all-in, you must instantly use your exhaust. So actually, before I start talking about this, let's talk about the exhaust versus ignite thing. As we've kind of established beforehand with our notepad right here, we have established that it's kind of hard to hit our spells, right? We don't have nearly the same level of self-peel. Our spells come out way slower. They're a lot harder to hit. So making sure that we take exhaust in most matchups is usually recommended. Although it's great to take ignite and try and score kills, it's not really that great in terms of scaling, and you kind of have to get a lot of kills in lane to get any value out of it. Whereas exhaust is always mandatorily valuable because of the fact that it's point and click, so it's really easy to use. Plus, on top of that, we can always get value out of it because of the fact that it buys time for our spells. So in situations where someone is coming in and we don't have our bubble quite ready, or it's going to be hard to hit the bubble, you can use the exhaust and then bubble off of that, or combo it the other way around. So anytime that your ADC is playing aggressive, it's really important to just make sure that you dump the exhaust immediately so that you can always gain value in that sense. As you can also see too, another mistake that commonly people do is when trades occur, you can kind of see right here that we've activated our W and the engage has happened. But what you need to be doing is pressuring the AD carry. Basically, what we always want to do is if you're the one focused, you kite backwards, and if you're the one not focused, you push forward. And that means that we are creating space on our opponent. That way we can get him off of our AD carry. So you kind of see right here that we're already sitting here just trading auto attacks the entire time and getting as much damage off as we possibly can. And an example of the auto attack animation is kind of right here, if you're kind of curious, where it kind of eats your animation so that you can auto again. So you can kind of see right here that your W goes and you can W in between it. So if I had auto W'd and autoed, if he had been arranged, then we still would have been able to get 2 auto attacks off. It's really important that we're getting a lot of damage and pressure in the laning phase and leveraging our area as much as possible. Plus, as you can kind of see right here, our W really doesn't do that much damage, like 60-ish damage, but our autos are doing competitive damage as it's doing 40. So it's really, really important in that sense to make sure that we're getting as many auto attacks off as we possibly can. And this is actually a great example of using your W on yourself and kind of spacing it out. So you can kind of see right here that we're going to W ourselves and see how he is walking in range, and we W ourselves, and as this is flying through, we're able to actually walk away. And this is an easy way for us to create pressure under the turret without leaving ourselves exposed to maybe potentially having a turret swing and auto attack us instead. Another thing to note too is recently I've been going E level 2 just so that we can always gain value off of it. That way we can always just get damage guaranteed, so you don't always have to hit the bubble in that sense. So next is just cutting backwards and making sure you're dealing damage to anyone else. So you kind of see right here that anytime that an engage occurs on our AD carry, we just want to make sure that we're kiting out as best we can. So we give him the E because it looks like he's going to trade. We bounce the W off, and we're just still auto-attacking as much as we can once we've created space between us. So the reason why we're starting to turn the auto attacks is because of the fact that the support is kind of disengaged. Whenever you're playing against tanks, it's really important just to pay attention to where he is standing. So for example, as you can see right here, as this guy is disengaging because he has the E on him, now we've created our trade triangle where he is significantly far forward. Anytime that you can trade HP down is pretty advantageous for a champion like Nami just because of the fact that we have sustain. So the longer the laning phase goes, the more advantageous it is for us if everyone's kind of under 50% health because of the fact that we can constantly bump our HP back up. So you can kind of see right here, we're taking a big trade and just dealing as much damage as we possibly can to him. Now that the wave is pushing back to us too because of the fact that we pushed in the first 2 waves, we're actually set up for a jungle gank. Now this is really important for lane control and pushing in general. This is why getting the push in the first 2 levels is really advantageous for you at all stages. Because now that we've pushed it in the 2 first waves, we've actually been able to get a wave on our side of the map. So now we can set up a gank very easily. And since the gank occurs like that, we're able to just kind of flash out and score both of these kills very easily. Now, a thing that happens actually for Nami that's really great is if your AD carry isn't in range of your teammate, then you can just trade by yourself. So you can kind of see right here that I know the jungler is ganking and I have flash so I can avoid skill shots. This concept is called leveraging. Whenever you have a summoner that allows you to evade or dodge skill shots, you should use it in a way that baits out skill shots so you can gain value from it. So I know that I have flash and my jungler is coming, so we use our E right here and we auto attack and W. That way we're getting most of the damage output. Another thing too is for people when you're trading, a really great way to trade is to actually E and W yourself. That way your W actually just slows on the spell. Plus we can always guarantee good value in that sense. Now remember what we said with trade triangles. So I've set myself up for a trade triangle where they can both collide on me. But because of the fact that we have flash, we can reposition and break this triangle in that sense. And now I've effectively baited the jungle gank. So as you can kind of see right here, I flash out immediately and just make sure that we're dumping as much damage onto the AD carry as possible. Because of this, we're able to set up the gank and we're able to score this kill. Working with your jungle is actually really important for baiting out ganks, just so that you can always create pressure and opportunities for us to just set up vision and pressure on this lane. So we'll just kind of tackle back into laning phase. Now, one thing to note is I actually prefer to just buy tier in general, just because it's a personal preference of mine to always never be restrained by mana in laning phase, since your mana costs are pretty high. But in a scenario where maybe you feel like you just need to make sure that you don't die, you could have also bought a ruby crystal here too, and that would have been fine too. So now that we kind of have the advantage and we're just missing our flash, it's really important for us to kind of position in a way that makes it really difficult for their support to jump on us. So I want to just kind of point out the positioning that I've been constantly doing. So you kind of see where the rel is, and anytime the rel moves forward in this location, I'm kind of giving ground so that the only person they can jump on is my AD carry, who is equipped with a dash, so he can get out very easily. And then anytime that he repositions over in this location, it allows me to walk forward. It's kind of like a dance where basically you're just posturing for positioning, where you can maybe reinforce your AD carry, but also make sure that the rel just can't jump on you. As you can see, since he has the brush right here, we're constantly just shifting back here so that it's very hard for us to get jumped on. Another thing to note too is if you ever have the tier in the early stages and you're above like 75% mana or so, it's completely fine to just trade your E out over and over again so that you can have pressure in the lane. So anytime I give my AD carry E, the enemy ADC has to kind of back off because otherwise they lose the trade in that sense. Plus it's really great for stacking tier in the early stages too. Now that we have kind of control of the lane again because of the fact that we got a gank, push the wave in, and then we have initiative on whatever we want for the wave, we're allowed to push this in all the way to the turret. Now this is where diving is an option for us to do. Now diving is a little bit more complicated and a little bit less frequent in terms of lower elo games, but diving is really important to learn. So as you can kind of see right here, we're going to start the dive and just hit whoever we can. It's really important, by the way, to pay attention to whoever is tanking the turret at the first start of everything. So as you can kind of see right here, our Viego walks in and he's tanking the turret. So that means that we can walk forward and just hammer anyone that we want. So as we see right there. And then once the aggro goes to someone else, it's really important to make sure you get out. Whenever you're doing dives, if you're not doing it on a tanky champion, you usually want to get one kill and then get out. And then afterwards, you can do a redive if you really want to with whoever is the most healthiest. And so in this situation, let's say that Ahri doesn't show up for this dive. What we could do afterwards is I could walk back in and I could tank the turret since I'm the healthiest in this sense. Since they're just chasing us right now, though, it's really important to just communicate whatever we have and make sure that it's really hard for them to all in. So we just trade out our exhaust immediately so that Ahri can't walk by and score a kill on anybody. After that, it's just important for us to just be auto-attacking whoever we can, and whoever's being focused just scoots back the entire time. This allows us to kind of flip every one of the fights and look for another potential kill. So that's kind of like working with the jungler and making sure that we're setting up ganks and dives in this sense. So let's go to kind of a different laning phase. So we're not going to have jungle intervention nearly as much, so we're going to be laning against kind of an enchanter. So this is where a lot of frequency of trading occurs, right? We're going to be trading against an enchanter very often, and enchanter lanes in general just have a tendency to kind of just trade back and forth as much as possible. So it's really important that we're just auto-attacking as much as possible on anyone that we can, and remembering to use our health potions relatively early. So whenever you're missing a decent amount of HP, we just want to use our health potions whenever our W is down and we're concerned about being all in. So as you can kind of see right here, remember the golden rule. If you're not auto-attacking a player, we're auto-attacking the minions. So you can kind of see that we're just auto-attacking the melees just so that it's significantly harder for them to get the push going, and we're going to have more of an even lane. Since we're under about 50% health, this is where we're going to start using our health potions just to kind of bump back our HP percentage so that we can keep pressuring. Now, if you end up losing a lot of HP or you're going to trade quite frequently, it's not terrible to use both potions at once, but it means that you constantly have to have a flow of pressure. Otherwise, you're going to actually get no value out of the second health potion. So as you can kind of see right here, I have the second health potion running. I'm auto-attacking quite frequently and just making sure that we're getting the W bounces as much as possible. A lot of times whenever you play against another enchanter, it's kind of just a numbers game of whoever can pump out the most damage and be the most efficient with their trades. Since I've lost a lot of HP now though, sometimes what you have to do whenever you're kind of lower on the HP, so you see me at half HP right now, so I'm a little bit more in the kill window. If the AD carry ever walks up and starts trading with me, I just need to exercise a lot of caution in that sense. So the enemy ADC, support ends up igniting me, and we're actually able to just kind of pull back and score a kill on this and then kite out. The main things that are really important to pay attention to, though, when it comes to trading is just trade triangles in general. So, as you can see right here, since my AD carry is moving forward at the same time, it's really difficult for their AD carry to get in on me. That means that despite the fact that I'm relatively low HP, I can actually push this trade really, really hard. So as you can kind of see right here, I'm just auto-attacking as much as possible, and then once the Q comes out, we're just going to flash out of there. And we've effectively kind of pulled them in and baited out some of their cooldowns, and now they're stuck in a scenario where they have to engage with my AD carry. Plus, on top of that, we're going to hit level 3. In case anyone doesn't know, the 3 melee minions from the wave after the cannon always guarantees you level 3 as long as you're gaining EXP. So playing around this EXP spike is actually really important too, because it allows you to actually swing a lot of pressure in the laning phase and allows you to kind of create pressure in that sense that if you hit level 3 before them, you have access to another skill. So you can kind of see right here, the minion dies and we hit level 3 here, which allows my AD carry to continuously trade. And now you can kind of see the dividends of the fact that we've been trading quite frequently, but not dying to any of it, is the fact that the Yuumi is incredibly low on mana and HP, whereas our mana is actually still completely fine because of the fact that we're just getting more efficient trades and we're not spamming nearly as many spells. Because of that, now you can kind of see right here where we've kind of got the sweet spot. We've absorbed as much damage as possible. We've gotten the ignite on ourselves, and now we can just kind of give buffs to our AD carry who can just push forward and score a kill. We bounce the W off of him, it gives him the extra movement speed needed to chase down the player, and we just score another kill in that sense. Plus, it also allows us to kind of scoot back and make sure that we get excited and not die to anything afterwards. Now, whenever you're put in a situation like this, it's actually better to heal your AD carry, as you can kind of see what I'm doing right here. If I heal myself, I'm still not in a healthy scenario where I can actually start fighting. So what I've done is I've actively topped off my AD carry. That way we're still farming, even if I can't contribute a lot in terms of my HP pool to the laning phase. It's kind of like an investment where if you give him HP, then he can actually go around and do stuff. Whereas, if you give yourself more HP, then it's not going to actually matter as much. And because of that, we're able to kind of walk around and collapse on the player and kill the player that is maybe just inting a little bit because he's mad at his bot lane that ended up dying. As you can kind of see right here, we're still sustaining our AD carry up as much as possible. If you keep his HP pool up, then that means that he can last hit the entire time, plus it also means that he can lifesteal. So now that I've effectively given him access to the wave and stuff, and he is mostly full HP, I can start Wing myself a little bit and start sustaining up. The important thing to note, though, is it's most likely that the enemy bot lane is reset because we saw the Kai'Sa channeling back, so we're just going to push this wave in. Technique usually when you want to push in waves as Nami, by the way, is to just bubble and auto attack the range minions as you've seen right here, because we just want to do damage to the effective health of the pool of minions so that we push in the wave. After that, we were able to get our tier, the goddess, and off of reset, we come over here and establish some vision. Despite the fact that you're an enchanter, if you have opportunities whenever you push the wave in, it's really great to just throw down a pink ward defensively. That way you can at least see if people are moving up and down the river. This ward is really great for that, as it allows us to see if maybe the echo gets vision and can run up and down there. Also, another thing to note, because of the fact that we are here first and we came through mid lane, we're actually able to get to this location and get to the vision a lot earlier. After that, it allows us to just kind of run down everybody in that sense and score multiple kills in that sense. So that's mostly what laning against other enchanters is like, where we want to make sure that we're actively trading, auto-attacking a lot so that we can get as much damage in as possible so that we can get a health and mana advantage, which allows us to play more aggressively off of our teammates. What you want to basically do against a lot of enchanters is kind of deplete your own health pool, but not your AD carries, and then just constantly cycle heals onto him for max range. That way he can kind of do the rest of the heavy lifting after you've kind of cycled out your HP. So next we're going to jump into is kind of some team fights and skirmishes. So not every game goes as well as you would hope for, and there's a lot of times when you play against champions that can all in you very easily. So Leona is a pretty common matchup in this sense, so we're going to talk a little bit about how to deflect all ins when it comes to Leona and other CC from other champions. The most important thing really is when Leona is looking for engages and or other tanks in general, is you kind of ideally want to throw a bubble in the path of wherever someone else is following up or where the Leona is following up herself. Since Leona can shoot her ultimate a lot farther than her Zenith Blade, we treat this the exact same way that kind of an auto attacker is, where if someone is moving forward, we want to be using our bubble to kind of block off the follow-up in that sense. It's really important to do this rather than throw the bubble at the engager themselves, because a lot of times the engager's already dropped all their CCs, so there's not really a lot of value when it comes to CCing them. So as you can kind of see right here from a fight like this is we're going to throw our bubble in the same concept. Leona uses her engage from long range, and what we could just do instead is substitute this for Leona's Zenith Blading in, and the AD carry is standing here instead, and we would throw the bubble in their path too. Usually when engages happen, AD carries have a tendency to just walk in a straight line to make sure that they can get there as fast as possible to follow up. If you throw the bubble in their way, they'll either get hit by the bubble or they'll dodge out of the bubble, and usually that means that they're far enough away that you can usually walk away because the CC's kind of ended. So you can get value out of bubble even if a lot of times you don't end up hitting it, just by putting it in the right spot that kind of deflects their ability to follow up. So you kind of see right here, we're able to just make sure that we're throwing it at Leona. And then, as we've kind of established before, Nami has really great movement speed swings. So because of that, and the fact that we all in right here, we're able to slow them down and just turn the fight. And this is another great example of kind of using our bubbles on people that are coming in range, right? So we've used our E, we're slowing people down, and since this has no way for him to run away anymore, we throw our wave in that sense. Now it's not going to finish completely, so we just flash and finish this player off, so it's not a problem. And then as you kind of see right here, this is a great example of it too. So Leona's used her engage, and the AD carry wants to get to this location as fast as possible. Because of that, he's going to just be in a straight line where it's just very easy for us to throw out our bubble. And remember what we said before, where exhaust always gains value even if you don't lead with it, because of the fact that you can chain it together. So when the bubble finishes, right, we're able to use our exhaust and just auto attack as much as possible. Now the thing is they've dumped ignite on me, so remember what we want to do. We want to absorb as much damage as possible in the skirmish before getting out and then playing max range and tossing all of our stuff to our AD carry. Now there's a couple of techniques that you can do sometimes though when it comes to skirmishing that are really, really important. So because ignite is on me, I've scooted back and started walking back. And what we can do here is we're going to bounce the heal off of ourselves, which bounces to the AD carry, which bounces to our AD carry. So now we've given him the movement speed and we've created all of that extra space for him. As you can kind of see right here, this is also another example of shooting our bubble in the way of an AD carry. So we've dodged out of everything right here, and we're just going to walk forward and zone away the Jinx. We're creating pressure on him so that only the Leona is hitting our AD carry while we're scooting backwards. After that, what we want to do is walk forward once again, and we're throwing out the bubble, which forces him to not walk into this space. And that buys us all the extra time for our W to come back up and to just hit the Leona the entire time. So we W him, we're just auto-attacking him the whole time, and because of that, we're just able to chase him down and score the kill. Despite the fact that this is technically a 3v2, we're able to actually win a lot of fights just by using our bubbles in terms of throwing it at the obvious person running forward. So this is a really important technique to kind of learn in that sense, so that we make sure that we're constantly deflecting those kinds of all-ins. This is your bread and butter for dealing with all-in lanes like Leona, Nautilus, Thresh, etc. If you learn how to do this, where you're throwing the bubble at people who are walking actively forward to you, you'll have a way easier time of deflecting this and saving you or your teammate from dying. So this is an important skill to kind of develop and understand in that sense when we're throwing our bubbles. So next is going to be actually a couple more bubble stuff, and then we're going to move into some heavy team fight stuff. So I think some of you have kind of seen the clip for it, but it's really important to note how to team fight well. So whenever we're team fighting, we want to make sure that we're stopping people from coming in. So using your wave early is the best way to kind of get people out of the fights. Plus, when you use your wave, it's a lot easier to hit, and then you can use bubble afterwards. Now, in some situations, you're not always able to do that, but it's pretty much the ideal scenario. So you can kind of see right here, we're scooting backwards. We're going to use our wave immediately to just push him out. And now that he's kind of out of the fight, it's fine. So next, we're going to just throw another spell in front of someone's path. So that is the most important thing when it comes to using our bubbles, is we're just constantly disrupting the engage and having things happen together. So I'm sure if any of you guys have played tank supports before, you've Alistar comboed in and your AD carry isn't quite in range, and then nothing happens on your CC. CC doesn't actually last very long. It's barely a second and a half. So just adding that disruption is really, really important for utilizing your bubbles. So it's actually just fortunate that he W's in on this, but really what we're doing is we're just throwing a bubble in a path so that he can't follow up. We're disrupting the follow-up that's happening so that only one thing is happening at once, which is the Renekton getting in. So next is just playing out the team fight. So now we've repositioned right, and we've created the ideal scenario where between, all the carries are right here in front of us. So we're just going to buff them up and just kind of make sure that it's really hard for us to be jumped on. And the important thing to note too is that we want to always reposition based on how other people are moving. So for example, what I want you to pay attention to is kind of our Tristana. So see how the Tristana is moving forward, so I move forward, but when Tristana starts stepping back, I step back. And then I wait for the Viego to go in, and then because the Viego is moving forward, we're able to shoot a bubble, and once again, we're just stopping the follow-up. So you see how we've effectively stopped the follow-up by throwing the bubble at them, and then this guy has gone in. What I want to point out is even if this bubble didn't hit and they all step backwards to dodge it, the scenario is still the same. It's not that important that your bubble hits, but where you're placing it so that you're disrupting engage. So as you can see right here, the bubble hits, but even if it didn't, these players would just be farther back and they wouldn't be able to follow up anyway. So it makes it so that the CC isn't that important, and we're just able to score another kill. And then after that, it's very easy pickings for you as a Nami player, because all you're going to do is you're just going to throw buffs on people, and you're just going to chase down anyone that you possibly can. So you can kind of see right here, we give our E to our carry, we W them to give them extra movement speed, and they'll pretty much always catch people once the CC is down and once the fight is kind of erupted. This is kind of like a fundamental for throwing out bubbles and how you get good value out of bubbles in fights and in skirmishes. So that is like a very important and fundamental thing to kind of pay attention to when it comes to team fighting. Because I would say in general, the easiest way to climb as Nami isn't to actually have a really efficient or powerful laning phase. It's just to have a neutral laning phase where you're kind of not getting run over, you're getting good farm, but you're still team fighting really, really well. So this is a really important thing for that sense, and this is like a very easy and effective way to kind of carry fights in that sense. So next we're going to jump into is team fighting around things like Baron. So as you can kind of see right here, we have started the Baron right now and the engage has happened. And the most important thing to note is just making sure that we're spreading out all of the engage once again. But this is using our wave. So as you can see right here, the Riven is going to come in and jump on my teammate. There's no way for me to basically stop this because it's just faster than your spells. So this is why exhaust is really fundamental for your champion, is I can use exhaust on one player while waving and stopping follow up on another. So usually when you fight around Baron, this corridor right here is kind of the most contested location, especially from the enemy team that you can kind of see is on the right side. So our primary thing is, once again, using the exhaust to stop this player, but also making sure that no one can follow up on this through this corridor. So you can kind of see right here, our wave is controlling this space and our exhaust is controlling that space. After that, we just make sure we're kiting backwards and just healing up whoever we can. So you can kind of see I'm tossing heals to anybody, and we're just constantly going in and out of the fight depending on the engages and who can maybe jump in. After that, it's mostly just playing with your teammates. So as you can see here, I'm just constantly E'ing my teammate, whoever is nearby me, so that we can slow them down and just look for the re-engage and chase. Basically, this is just a good example of controlling space around Baron because of the fact that we want to make sure that we're always controlling this corridor. So whenever people engage on you and your team, what you're usually using your wave for is to stop the follow-up, as we've kind of discussed earlier with throwing our bubbles. But wave is obviously a little bit easier just because it's a bit bigger and you don't have to put yourself nearly at the same level of risk. So this is a good example of kind of playing around Barons and utilizing that in that sense. So next what we're going to do is kind of look over some, yeah, it's a bit bigger. Yeah, it's a lot bigger. So next what we're going to do is kind of look over coming off of respawns and skirmishing around Dragon, the early stages, and paying attention to kind of your positioning in most situations. So as you can kind of see right here, because I just wanted to show you how the fight started, our teammates are able to jump on one player, but they're actually getting piled on over in this corridor. So after the skirmish starts happening, we're going to show up on this a little bit slow, but it's really, really important to learn how to kite as Nami. So what I want you to pay attention to is a couple of things. For kiting as Nami, a huge mistake a lot of people make is they have a tendency to run away from their teammates and just try to get away from their opponents. When in actuality, it's really important to just drag people to your teammates, especially if you think maybe you could potentially die, because then you can trade kills because they're on top of your teammates. So the important thing that I kind of want you to pull from this is when you're getting focused as Nami. So as you can kind of see right here, we're going to walk through here. This player is pushing down on the bottom side. It's basically a 3v3 in most cases. So we're going to use our wave to just try to follow up on that. And it doesn't actually hit anything. But the important thing to pull away from this fight is just how to kite with Nami. So you see, I don't run up and away from anybody. I run to the fight right here. Now, the easiest thing for you to do too is to bubble in the path that you're walking. It's a very important thing and fundamental thing to understand when being focused by melee champions, to not panic too hard and just use your bubble and walk through it. That way, the same concept applies that we've talked about earlier when we were throwing our bubbles at engaging forces. Is even if they dodge the bubble, if the bubble's in a good spot, then what'll happen is if they have to step back, then you still gain the value of the bubble because they've technically walked away and given you the distance. So as you can kind of see right here, they're focusing me right now, and I'm in a bubble and just walk through it. And because of that, it sets up a good bubble for them, and we're able to score multiple kills. But even if that bubble didn't hit those players, what would happen is if they took the time to actively dodge it, I'd still be able to run away. And kiting towards your teammates is really important because even if for whatever reason maybe I do die in that scenario, it's fine because now the Garen is on top of my teammates and they're able to trade the kills and score kills on them too. So what I'm going to show you here is kind of a more enhanced version of this. So people are a lot stronger. There's a lot more damage in the game. It's not in the early games where everyone's like 5 and 6. You can kind of see I'm level 10. He's level 12 on our Singe. So we're going to talk about kind of holding choke points and kiting towards our teammates a little bit more and paying attention to our cooldowns. So an important thing that is really undervalued is making sure we cycle our spells. So I would ask the question to you guys, why is CDR important? So anyone can answer this. You can type it in the chat or whatever. So why is CDR important? Why is it like the stat we care about the most? So we get more spells off, right? Yeah, perfect. So we get CDR for more spells. So it's really important that we actually use the time that we have on our spells. So something really important to pay attention to is just your own cooldowns. So you can kind of see right here, boom, my W comes up, I use it again. We want to make sure that we're constantly using our spells as frequently as possible. That way we're constantly getting the heal value. Because every second that you wait where you haven't casted your spell is another second that you basically lost in terms of value of your CDR. So as you can kind of just see from this that I want you to pay attention to is just kind of look at my W cooldown, right? So it's off cooldown, it's on cooldown. And that's an important thing to really pay attention to because we want to make sure that we're constantly keeping that on cooldown as much as possible. So now let's talk about leveraging like we talked about in the laning phase. Whenever you have flash, we want to make sure that we're leveraging it in a way that allows us to get away. So as you can kind of see right here, we're using our W's to keep people topped off. And we're pushing forward with our team, right? We want to reinforce it. But Cassidon's coming from behind. So he jumps on me. And we're going to flash over the wall. Because if we flash backwards, we're most likely dead in this sense. And we want to continuously push forward. Now next is kind of using any brushes to your advantage. So you can kind of see right here, I've taken the brush now. Because it's a lot harder for people to see me in this location unless it's warded. So it's just easier for me to survive in that sense. And as you can kind of see right here, we run a sweeper at the same time. So it's a lot harder for him to see me. As you know, you can see right here, he can't see me nearly as well. He can't target me. And we're just kind of kiting towards our teammates as much as possible. And then after that, since we're paying close attention to our cooldowns, we use our wave, which buys us the extra half a second. And we don't end up dying here at all. It's really important and maybe something that a lot of people need to get used to is kind of just kiting towards your teammates that way that they can actually reinforce and protect you. A lot of times people have a really bad habit of see enemy player, run away from enemy player, but a lot of times that takes them away from their teammates. So this is a really great example. These are two really great examples of making sure that if you are being focused as a squishy champion, maybe your positioning isn't as great, or maybe you just don't have the afforded option to have good positioning because there's just so much mobility in the game. It's really important to make sure that we're kiting towards our teammates. That way they can reinforce us and score kills on those players. The best CC on a lot of enemy players is death. So make sure to leverage that as much as possible. And that pretty much concludes my kind of state of it. Do you guys have any other questions or things that you'd like to know about Nami? Maybe that I didn't cover, or maybe things that we haven't talked about quite yet? Build path. Yeah, sure. Let's talk about build paths real quick. Let's do the first part, right, which is our mythics. In most games, we want Moonstone. It's just, no, never mandate anymore. Mandate's kind of a dead item. Unfortunately, they ruined it. So it's just Locket versus Moonstone. I would say probably about 80 to 90% of your games, you want Moonstone. Just because Moonstone is just super powerful. It gives you a ton of stat budget. We like the ability haste on it, etc. But let's look at how to identify those 10 to 20% of Locket games. And I'm going to kind of show you a game where Locket was a really good buy. Okay, perfect. So here is a Locket game. So maybe some people would be curious as to like, why did you go Locket this game? You know, most of your games you're going Moonstone. Moonstone is usually the better option. But why did you go Locket here? So Locket is really good for scenarios where there's a lot of assassins that you just can't all exhaust all of them. So in most situations, if you take Guardian and you go the Resolve conditioning, you're usually okay in most cases against one assassin. So if there's just a Zed, if there's just a Talon, right? If there's just one of these champions, then usually an exhaust on that champion will most likely keep you alive, or it will cost them so many resources that you'll usually win the fight because of it. So in most cases, you want to go Moonstone. But in scenarios where there are multiple assassins, or a lot of AoE damage, Locket is really great. So as you can see right here, the team composition for the enemy team is a Kali, Karthus, and Zed, with also a Lucian and a Set. So there are basically technically four. I would consider Karthus basically dive just because of the fact that he ults you. So there's a lot of AoE damage, and there's multiple assassins. So in scenarios where this occurs, this is really great to go Locket. Great examples of this are maybe instead of an Akali top or a Zed mid, there's a Blue Kayn and something else in mid lane like a Talon. This is fine to go Locket also. If you feel like there are just too many things that are going to dash on you, CC you, you know, try to kill you in that sense, this is really a great time for you to go Locket. Plus, if there's a lot of AoE damage, you can always get insane value out of Locket. So I like Locket against this also just because of the fact that Karthus is in the game. It's also one of the indicators for when I build Redemption is when I play against Karthus, just because he does so much AoE damage since his ult hits all 5 players that you can get AoE value out of things like Locket and Redemption. In most cases, though, you're going to go Moonstone. As you can kind of see from my match history, like, we're pretty much always going Moonstone. It's mostly your second and third item that kind of are the variants in most cases. But that's kind of the differentiation between Locket and Moonstone, is just, do they have multiple assassins that are going to kill me or try to kill me? If the answer is yes, that you can't exhaust, you know, you don't have 2 exhaust for 2 players at the same time, that's not how the game works, then Locket is fine. Otherwise, for the most part, we're just going to be building Moonstone, and that's kind of just how it goes for us. So next is kind of the secondary items. So for itemization, you kind of have 3 items as an option. So you have the first one, which is Cosmic Drive, right? This gives you an insane amount of ability haste. Ability haste is such a crazy good stat on Nami in general. This is an item just in general that is really good, and it's easy to hit 160 ability power if it's your second item. If it's not your rush item, you'll pretty much always have it if you build Moonstone, so you'll usually be in good shape in that sense. Plus, Gathering Storm is really great with this too, just because it gives us our benchmark very easily. So I like Cosmic Drive generally as the second item in most games. In most games, I'd probably say maybe like 65% of the time, I'm going Cosmic Drive. It's just generically good, gives you way more spell CDR. You can spam your spells out way more frequently. Because we have the tier, we're not going to run into nearly as many mana problems. So in general, I'm just a big fan of Cosmic Drive. Gives you way more utility and power in most senses. Next is Staff of Flowing Water. It's never a bad item, but there's a bit of redundancy built into it because it gives movement speed, but you know, your passive already gives movement speed, so the movement speed is kind of null and void. It's mostly just a stat stick. This is an item you usually get if maybe you're really needing to kite. There's like 3, 4, 5 melees on the enemy team, and you just need to run away from them as much as possible, and positioning is a really important thing. You can build this, but usually I like this as a third item. I prefer to get Cosmic Drive and then build in a Staff of Flowing Water. So this is more of my third item more often than not. I probably build this like, you know, 15-20% of the games. But if you need to kite out, you know, move around a lot more, movement speed is really what you should be looking at. Even though your character gives movement speed already, this is just great extra movement speed. So if you feel like, you know, there's a Singed or a Sed or a Darius, you know, you got to kite out those champions, then this is a good item to get second. But worst case scenario, you should build this third no matter what, just because the stat budget's pretty good. Cosmic Drive just feels generally better, though, in most cases, so that's why I recommend Cosmic Drive in most cases. Cosmic Drive would be best second with Locket, right? No, you don't have enough AP when you go Locket, because it has no AP attached to it, and you're usually taking Guardian, so that means you don't have Gathering Storm. In a scenario where you're going Locket, you should go Staff of Flowing Water or Redemption. So I went Redemption in the last game just because I want more tools to kind of like buy time and heal my teammates up because lots of AoE damage. If there's not a lot of AoE damage and there's just assassin-based things, then Staff of Flowing Water is probably just going to be the best because you just don't have the AP for Cosmic Drive. Yeah, Cosmic is better than Staff in most cases. How good of an item is Moonstone if the enemy jungle has gets healing reduction? It doesn't matter. Healing reduction doesn't actually matter that much. It's still a really good item. Just in general. And then, and then the other one is Putrefier. So this is like very rare, but if the enemy team has a lot of healing and maybe your teammates are just dum-dums, if you go Moonstone especially, you can build Putrefier second. So I build this whenever I play against like Yumi, for example, or Soraka. If there's like an abundance of healing and I feel like my team isn't building healing reduction early enough, then Putrefier is a really good second or third item, depending on how much healing reduction your teammates are getting. If your teammates are already getting some healing reduction by the time you're looking at a second item, then you can go Cosmic Drive into Putrefier. That way you just guarantee healing reduction on everybody, but you have some. So if, you know, you can convince your teammates to build those Executioners, get those Oblivion Orbs, you know, after you finish your, your Moonstone, then this is kind of like a second or a third item, just depending on the variance of your teammates. But this is a really great item, especially with Moonstone, because when your Moonstone is healing people, then that's also giving them the Putrefier effect. So it's really great against a lot of heavy heal teams in that sense. Is sitting on an orb an option for Nami? No. If you finish if you finish your Moonstone and you build an Oblivion Orb, you should just finish off the item, because of the stat efficiency. So you see right here, it's got 20 ability haste, and we've already established that ability haste is a very valuable attribute for our character. So we want to just finish it off, because like if you're gonna spend 1,800 gold. If you look at this item in general, it's kind of a poop item, like by itself. It's just 30 ability power for 800 gold. But if you invest the extra let's see, 1,500 gold into this, you can get 20 ability haste, which is super good. And then now you have 60% grievous wounds instead of 40%. So you see how this is 40%, but this is 60%, and it's going to be applying to anyone you heal or shield. So it'd be so good in the team fights, and it's very easy for you to proc, just like we already established. The Moonstone will be going over and healing people all the time, so it's a really, really good combo to run on most cases. You can run this if you go lock it and you do like a Guardian build too, but it's a bit weaker. That's basically the main thing. Does E proc grievous wounds? So the way it works is if you E yourself, yes. If you E a teammate, no, unless you have Chem Tank Putrefier and you have Airy, because a lot of times when you E someone, it procs Airy, and Airy is a shield, which qualifies as a healing or shielding mechanic for the Putrefier, which then will proc it. It's kind of like how old Ardent, like when we used to build Ardent all the time, right? Ardent with Airy was really great because you could E your teammate, and then that would proc Airy, which would then proc Ardent. I know it's like, there's lots of layers for that, like stupidness, but that's like kind of how it works in that sense. You haven't mentioned Ardent at all. It's a garbage item. It's a waste of your gold. It's quite literally a waste of your gold, because most of your build paths are gonna have Moonstone, Cosmic Drive, Staff of Flowing Water, and then your fourth item option should usually be something like either a Death Cap, a Zonia's, or a Putrefier. It's almost always a waste of gold to build Ardent. Yeah, I would not recommend building Ardent basically at all. It's just not really that great, and by the time you can look at it as an optionable option, a viable option, there's just better options for you because of things like Cosmic Drive and AP that we want, that it's just not worth your gold. Okay, but yeah, I mean, that pretty much concludes kind of like the build paths. Does anyone ever have any other questions or anything like that? When to pick her, though? It's mostly a you thing, as in, do you like playing the champion, or are you comfortable on her? If you feel like the answer to that is yes, then you can play her a lot. But if you feel like no, then you just don't play her at all. Remember what we talked about before, right? Where she may get outscaled by other enchanters, but she's more flexible. If you have a mid laner that's doing well, a bruiser that's doing well, etc., she can get a lot more value on them than like a champion like Lulu, who wants, just to put on every buff to a Vayne or a Jinx or a Kog'Maw, right? So she's way more flexible. It's mostly skill. So if you like playing her, sorry. If you like playing her and you feel comfortable on her, you can play her in most matchups. But then, if you don't like her at all, then you just don't play her at all. She's kind of like a pretty feast or famine in that sense of playing her. How does she compare to Karma? She's weaker in lane than Karma, but she's better at dealing with losing lanes, and she's way better in team fights. That's how I would compare her. So Karma's like I crush lane, I have pressure, but I have low CC, but I'm like a good stat stick. And then Nami is like, I do okay in winning matchups, and I do pretty well actually into losing matchups, where she can just sustain up and keep people alive the whole time. And then she's a great team fighter. She's just super good at team fighting. She's kind of like Sona, but she doesn't have to wait till she's level 11 or 16 to do anything. She's just really good at grouping and team fighting and 5v5ing, just because of the fact that, the wave is really easy to hit. 3 of her 4 spells always give value, that even if you don't hit bubbles, like, you can still get good value out of her. So that's what I like about her. And the fact that when you start winning a fight, you can win a fight more because of the fact that you have the movement speed swing. So once you've effectively kited out, you can swing the fights very easily by giving buffs to you and your teammate, and then just pushing down and chasing them. Thank you guys so much for coming out, asking questions. Appreciate it a lot. Feedback's always appreciated, by the way.